This is Florida Gulf Coast University.
Grandfather Rick Lane was an oil driller from 1966 to 1983, and by the end of his career, he was recognized as one of the best oil drillers in the business. He knows the good, the bad, the ins and the outs of the business. He knows the truth, and he knows the horrors. As a driller on an offshore rig, my grandfather saw the mistakes that could be made and the harm that could be done both to his colleagues and to the environment. People make mistakes, Grandpa said. Accidents are inevitable, so we should just keep them minimal. My grandfather explained to me how drilling mud is pumped through a drill pipe to keep the drilling equipment lubricated. The workers would fill up barrels with either oil-based or water-based mud. When the mud reached the bottom of the pipe, it got pushed back up along with clippings from the drill bit. The men would occasionally let too much oil out by a myriad of mistakes such as opening the wrong valve. According to my grandfather, about half of oil-based mud is toxic, and accidents range from anywhere from spilling 10% to 100% of the mud. Other times, the men were told to spill the mud and the excess water-based mud into the ocean in the middle of the night. Although it wasn't as toxic as mud that was oil-based, it was still hazardous to the aquatic environment. In our conversation, my grandfather shared the tragic stories of his friends and coworkers who were seriously injured on the job. One day, the casing of a large pipe crashed down on a worker's foot. The pipe had a thick rubber base. Because of the rubber, the pipe was not sharp or strong, so when it landed, it didn't slice the foot in a clean cut, it crushed it. My grandfather remembers the deaths especially. Once, he and a coworker were screwing pipes together. Suddenly, the pipe hit and broke off a stabbing board. The stabbing board is a temporary platform meant to remain 24 feet above the ground. Its purpose is solely to act as a place for drillers to work on. Suddenly, the stabbing board, appropriately named, split in half and swung right down to the ground and stabbed my grandfather's coworker directly in the chest. The puncture killed him instantaneously. Another tragedy occurred when a driller lifted a 15-foot pipe too high, causing it to snap the lignum piping. The pipe swung around and sliced the man's head clean off. My grandfather wasn't spared injury. He often carried heavy objects to the welding truck in order for the object to be repaired. Once he was taking a pipe from a section of the pump to the truck. The pipe was about 6 to 8 inches across and was L-shaped. When he put the pipe down, my grandfather's finger got caught in the end of the truck and it was sliced off. The tragedies aren't caused only by equipment mishaps. Men are working very high elevation on a rig. Once, my grandfather remembers, while his crew was moving the rig, he was asked to dismantle it with large trucks and cranes. At an extraordinarily high altitude, he took a sledgehammer and knocked off the pins that were roughly 6 inches long and 4 inches thick. Knocking the last pin out, he thought everything was fine until he was thrown from the crane. Luckily, my grandfather had a safety belt on and fell only 20 feet. However, the belt got caught and crashed him into the rig. He hit his leg so hard it swelled 7 inches larger than the other leg. He was one of the lucky ones, because most of the time the men didn't wear their safety belts, since they felt the belts slowed them down. These are only a few of the extraordinary numbers of stories that can be told by a single worker. There are also perpetual and chronic health issues that are instigated by chemical exposure. My grandfather has developed a blood condition called neutropenia because of his time on the rig. His immune system doesn't have an adequate amount of white blood cells to fight infection. Doctors say that he got the disease from all of the chemicals that he mixed to treat the mud. He's on medication which has side effects such as bone and muscle pain, headaches, nausea, nosebleeds, and vomiting. Just another cost of doing business. Even after all these years, Rick Lane is proof that time does not heal all. On top of the extreme dangers that drillers face, subtle issues plague them long afterwards, emotional issues. One cannot neglect to acknowledge the devastating effects that oil rig work has on a driller's mental health. The emotional well-being of workers is most often in a turbulent state as the workers are away from their loved ones for long periods of time. Alcoholism and depression are rampant among these men. My grandfather saw and experienced the serious psychological consequences of life on an oil rig and admitted it wasn't exactly a pretty picture. The reality is that oil drilling is dangerous, not just for the environment, but for the drillers as well. Given the scarce nature of the job market, I understand that the argument that oil drilling in the Gulf would be a wonderful way to provide people with much needed work. But I believe that, faced with these stories, most people and their families would agree that their safety and their lives are far more important than a paycheck.
streets and urban bustle of inner-city Miami for an island just beyond the reach of mainland development. At the time, we knew little about life on Sanibel Island beyond what we'd seen in tourist brochures. We knew that Sanibel had long been a favorite vacation destination for snowbirds seeking temporary relief from intemperate northern climes, and that it had earned an international reputation for the variety of shells found along stretches of its private white-sand beaches. What we didn't know was that Sanibel would inspire, surprise, and delight us in ways that were far from trivial or temporary. Restricted public lighting and building codes on the island, nothing over 3 stories high, have produced an unexpected side effect. The nights are so dark that I found myself planning my evenings in sync with the stages of the moon. A full moon granted me an evening stroll on the beach. A quarter moon made it harder to spot the 8-foot alligator who often wandered into our yard from the lake behind our house. This city girl with an aversion to sentimentality or pathos found herself so captivated by the number and brightness of stars gracing Sanibel's night sky that romantic cliches about starry nights, the bane of writing teachers everywhere, now assumed a freshness and truth. Stranger still was my reaction to the lack of streetlights. I'd always been afraid of the dark, yet I have never again felt as safe as I did when shrouded in Sanibel's still, dark night. We grew accustomed to the sound of the sea, to watching fish hawks hunt in the lake behind the house, to flocks of white ibises foraging in the grass, to alligators sunning themselves in the midday sun, giant lizards in some B-movie I'd seen as a child. I ran on the beach early in the mornings, hearing only the wind, my breathing, and the splashing of fish feeding at dawn. Once, as I took greedy breaths of sea air to finish the morning mile, I caught sight of something extraordinary. A mass migration of stingrays, thousands of them swimming in file along miles of shallow water. I was transfixed, grateful for the honor of bearing witness to a primordial ritual, a natural rite of passage that has ensured survival. In this place, the sea casts its beautiful bones on the sand each day. Every afternoon, I harvested coquinas, tulips, lightning bugs, and olive shells, marveling at their otherworldliness. The sea's gifts to me became my gifts to others, as shells then graced mirrors and shadow boxes, my handmade offerings to friends and family. Even our urban cats, Peanuts and Lovepuss, once adept at dodging cars on neighborhood streets, delighted in this wild and unspoiled new environment. The orange tabby, Peanuts, had been the bane of sparrows, so we made him wear a collar with bells to warn his feathered prey. But the first time he encountered a great blue heron, our little predator bolted, confused and terrified at the sight of a bird over 4 feet tall. It wasn't unusual for raccoons, turtles, or groups of sleek bobcats about knee-high to travel through our backyard at night. One evening, we heard a cat yelp and ran outside. Flashlight in hand, my husband found himself face to face with a full-grown bobcat. He had thick forelegs, pointy ears, and our precious Lovepuss dangling from his mouth. My husband did something that he'd later marvel at and could not explain. He knelt down on one knee and met the big cat's yellow eyes. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then that splendid animal did something surprising as well. He dropped our dead cat, turned, and was gone in one graceful leap over our neighbor's fence. We buried Lovepuss by the lake, deep in the soil that nourishes such abandoned life in Sanibel. The gumbo limbo tree that we planted in his memory has grown tall and shades our new home. That year that we spent on Sanibel enriched our lives immeasurably, and we came to understand that there was a price to be paid for its feral beauty, a debt that we owe the natural world. Those of us who have come to know the joys of Sanibel's magnificent coast, its natural bounty and unique gifts, have made a silent promise to honor that debt.